Before the NBA playoffs officially begin, here are 7 trends I'm keeping a very close eye on, all of which could seriously shape how the postseason unfolds. Let's start off with the first thing that I'm going to be watching, and that's how teams continue to defend Steph Curry. And from there, how does Golden State respond? Golden State has been on a late season surge, trying to climb the standings in a tight Western Conference race. They won 5 straight, looking like a real threat again, until they ran into the Houston Rockets. That game changed everything. The Rockets rolled out a strategy that Golden State had been familiar with earlier in the season, smothering Stephen Curry with everything they had. They were constantly face guarding, trapping, and doubling even when he didn't have the ball. They were so committed to shut him down, they were literally handing out layups to his teammates just to keep Steph out of rhythm, and it absolutely worked. Curry, who came into the game on fire, dropping 125 points across his last 3 games, suddenly went ice cold. He finished with just 3 points on 1 of 10 shooting while having more turnovers than points. Houston won 106-96, handing Golden State's new look starting lineup its first loss after a perfect 14-0 run. Now, this wasn't just about Steph having an off night. This is a blueprint, one that other playoff teams might be tempted to copy. The big difference now is absolutely going to be Jimmy Butler. He wasn't on the team earlier in the season when teams tried this ultra-aggressive defense on Steph. As since Jimmy has arrived, opponents backed away from that approach, worried about giving him too much room to operate. But Houston didn't care. They dared Jimmy to beat them, and he didn't. He scored just 13 points on 7 shot attempts, mostly avoiding tough looks in traffic. He didn't provide the punch Steph needed when things got tough. And then there's Jonathan Kuminga. He did have some great performances against Houston in the past, even dropping 33 points on them earlier in the season, but Steve Kerr only played him just 19 minutes in this one, despite him looking quite solid when he was out there. That's something that just can't happen. I know that he got pulled because of bad turnovers, however, Kuminga's not a point guard. There's other ways to utilize him without him having to bring the ball up the floor, which would better suit his play style, and you've also got to let him have these mistakes for him to develop as a player. But again, Steve Kerr benched Kuminga and swapped him out for Santos, and this is something that just can't happen, especially when your team is starving for offensive answers. Houston's defense does deserve a ton of credit, because by no means not every team can pull this kind of an effort off, but the Rockets have so many great individual defenders that can just send wave after wave at Steph and still hold their own in a one-on-one coverage with Jimmy. It's the extra size they have on the perimeter while still being quick that has constantly gave opposing guards in this league nightmarish nights against this Houston defense. And that is why this strategy works so well again against the Warriors. Now, the big question is, can the Warriors adapt? If this kind of scheme can completely take Steph out of a game, Golden State's title hopes take a massive hit. But if they can figure out how to counter it, turn that over coverage into open looks for confident shooters or aggressive slashers, could it actually become their biggest strength? Potentially. A lot of that has to do with Jimmy Butler, as he needs to be more aggressive. Steve Kerr also has to trust Kuminga more, and the rest of the team has to make the defense pay for overcommitting to Steph by cutting to open space or knocking down their open threes. There's still plenty of reasons to believe in the Warriors. I mean, they are 21-3 with Jimmy, but this game showed a potential crack in their armor, and you can bet your bottom dollar that teams will be watching that Rockets film very closely. The second trend I'll be watching very closely going into the playoffs is what on earth is going on with the Milwaukee Bucks, and this time in a good way. Last time I talked about Milwaukee, it wasn't so positive. I'd literally titled it the same thing, what is going on with the Bucks, but back then the vibes are off, the team looked disconnected, and we just received the terrible news surrounding Damian Lillard. Now, things are starting to flip, and it all started with a classic Shams bomb. Out of nowhere, Shams reported that Dame is expected to be cleared in 7 to 10 days, and it's already been 5 days after the report. Once he gets the medical green light, he'll return to full basketball activity, and then after that, it's only a matter of time before he suits up again. We could be looking at a return as early as the final games of the regular season, or most likely early in round 1. And suddenly, the Bucks go from being a shaky, underperforming squad with a clear ceiling on what the team could accomplish to a dangerous sleeper sleeper in the East. Because while Dame's been sidelined, Giannis has been playing out of his mind. In the last 2 games, he put up a ridiculous stat line. 71 points, 32 rebounds, and 30 assists, becoming the first player to ever record at least 70, 30, and 30 over a 2-game span since Wilt Chamberlain back in 1968. That is the kind of dominance we're talking about with Giannis. Giannis has been operating as the team's de facto point guard, and honestly, he's thriving in that role. And it's even got me thinking, maybe the Bucks should continue to lean into this even when Dame returns. Let Giannis initiate the offense and have Dame play like more of an off-ball shooter or secondary shot creator. It could be a fascinating long-term wrinkle, though realistically, once Dame's back, things will probably return to the old setup. But that's the thing, the normal version of Dame and Giannis has not exactly been lights out this season. Their chemistry has clicked a little better this year compared to last, but it's still far from what people were expecting. It's been more of a your turn, my turn style rather than a true two-man game. And that kind of basketball tends to fall apart under the playoff pressure. But what's given me more optimism though are the role players. Take Kevin Porter Jr. for example. Since joining Milwaukee, he's been hooping. Limited minutes, no problem. He had a triple-double off the bench, and then just recently, he put up 24 points, 12 rebounds, and 8 assists, along with a game winner in overtime against the Heat. He's looked great as a decision maker and shot maker, along with bringing it on the defensive end, as it seems like he's completely locked into Milwaukee's system, as he's giving them exactly what they need off the bench. Plus, Bobby Portis is set to return from his 25-game suspension, and Jericho Sims is on the way as well, giving them much-needed front-court depth. That's been a real issue lately. They've been leaning heavy into small ball lineups because they've just got Lopez and Giannis, and they obviously have to stagger those guys because they can't play them a full game. When you look at the team as a whole, this Bucks team is way deeper than I think people realize. And if Dame can get back in rhythm, return to his old self, and actually start complimenting Giannis instead of trading possessions with him, suddenly they are looking very dangerous and are most certainly a sleeper team in the Eastern Conference. They've got the star power, a well-rounded roster, and if they get Dame back in good time, there's no telling what this team is capable of, as I'm going to be watching them very closely. Now, the third trend I'll be watching very closely heading into the postseason has to do with the Rockets and their double big setup. Yeah, you heard that right. The double big is back in a massive way, and it's sweeping across the whole league. Many teams around the league have been leaning into size in a big way this season. Oklahoma City's had success with Chad Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein, Boston's pairing with Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford, and Cleveland continues to lean into Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. But nobody, and I mean no one, is doing it better than the Houston Rockets. Houston's version of the double big lineup has been absolutely destroying teams. Over a small sample size of just 321 possessions, they've posted a net rating of plus 32.5. If you're not big on analytics, just know this. That number is outrageous, like league-shattering good. To put it into better perspective, OKC's Holmgren-Hartenstein duo has a net rating of plus 13.8, Boston's Porzingis and Horford have a net rating of 12.2, and Cleveland's front-court pairing of Mobley and Allen have a plus 11.4 net rating. So yeah, Houston's 32.5 stands head and shoulders above the rest. But let's dig even deeper. This lineup isn't just outscoring opponents, they're dominating them in every meaningful way. 99th percentile for points scored per 100 possessions, 100th percentile in offensive rebound rate, 100th percentile in points allowed per 100 possessions, and also in the 100th percentile in effective field goal percentage, as it's just complete and utter control on both ends of the court. And the results speak for themselves. The Rockets just picked up back-to-back statement wins over two heavyweights, Oklahoma City and Golden State, and over their last 17 games, they've only lost twice. This team is absolutely rolling, and calling them hot doesn't even do it justice. Still, despite this dominant stretch, I'm absolutely going to be keeping a close eye on them because there are still some big question marks. The fourth thing I'll be keeping a very close eye on heading into the playoffs is whether or not LeBron James and Luka Doncic can actually coexist at the highest level. Now, don't get me wrong, having two of the top 10 players in the league on the same roster is obviously a great thing. And when you can stagger their minutes, it almost feels unfair. But the real question, the one that's going to matter when we hit the postseason, is how good they can be together on the floor. When they're out separately, they've been fantastic. Take Luka, for example. When he's running the show without LeBron James, this Lakers team has looked like a well-oiled machine as they're boasting a plus 16.9 net rating, which puts them in the 99th percentile for overall lineups. As for LeBron, his solo numbers are skewed a little bit by the fact that this Lakers team was nowhere near as good as they are now before the trade. So while his net rating alone is a minus 1.6, I would be taking that with a serious teaspoon of salt. But here's where things get tricky. When they're on the floor together, you'd expect them to be an unstoppable force. However, they have a net rating of just 1.3. That's not bad, but it's far from dominant and far from good enough, especially when we're talking about two generational stars. And here's the big thing. Once the playoffs begin, they are going to be sharing the court a lot more. Staggering minutes becomes tougher because every second matters. If Luka and LeBron can't consistently thrive together, this team's ceiling is a lot lower than we might think. So far, they've logged just over 1,000 possessions as a duo, a pretty decent sample size, and the best version of them so far has been in that small ball lineup. That group, LeBron at the 5, Finney-Smith and Hachimura at the forward spots, and Reeves and Luka in the backcourt. Over 176 possessions, the lineup has a plus 8.7 net rating, which lands them in the 61st percentile overall. Offensively, they're a nightmare to deal with, as you've got 5 guys who can all put the ball on the floor, attack closeouts, and hit a 3. Together, they're shooting a scorching 62% from the field, which is in the 87th percentile for scoring efficiency. And defensively, they hold their own as well, allowing just 111.2 points per 100 possessions, which is very solid. The issue? Size. As good as this group is offensively, they struggle to protect the glass. Bigger, more physical teams can bully them on the boards, getting dominated in the second chance points game. Then there are 2 other notable Luka LeBron lineups with real minutes. One is the regular starting 5 that features Rui, and the other swaps in Dorian Finney-Smith. The Rui Hachimura lineup has a net rating of plus 6 in the 55th percentile, while the DFS version actually dips into the negative, just minus 2.3 for net rating, putting them in the 34th percentile. So a long story short, they're not consistently dominant when Luka and LeBron are together. And if the team wants to be taken seriously as a true title contender, that's a concern. The potential is absolutely there though. We know how great they can be individually, but between now and the playoffs, they need to find a way to put it all together and not just get by. They need to become a real force together, because if they do, the Lakers could be unstoppable. The 5th thing I'll be watching very closely heading into the playoffs is how OG Anunoby continues to perform now that Jalen Brunson is back in the mix. Let's start with Brunson. He injured his ankle in a wild overtime loss to the Lakers and has been sidelined since, just recently making his return against the Suns. And to be honest, he did look like a guy who was shaking off the rust, finishing with just 15 points on 33% shooting. But despite the slow start, there's no doubt that the Knicks are absolutely a different team with him on the floor, and if the Knicks have any shot at a deep playoff run, it starts and ends with Jalen Brunson being healthy and in rhythm. Now, the surprise in all of this has been OG Anunoby. Many people thought Karl Anthony Towns would have to step up and carry the offensive load, but that has not been the case. It's been OG who's taken that leap, and nobody saw it coming quite like this. His teammate Josh Hart put it best. He's realized he's a 6'8", 240-pound demon. Over the last 15 games without Brunson, Anunoby has put up 23.2 points, 1.2 steals on 47, 39, 87 shooting splits. And most importantly, the Knicks went 9-6 in that time. He's been a totally different player on the offensive end, putting the ball on the floor more, using his size to get downhill, earning him more trips to the free throw line. He's attacking with confidence, playing with aggression, and straight up hooping. This version of OG looks nothing like the low usage 3-and-D guy we're used to seeing. This guy, he looks like he could be a legitimate legitimate third option on a title contender. So here's the question I'll be watching. Can OG keep this up now that Brunson's back? Or was this just a byproduct of somebody having to score the basketball because Jalen was out? Because if this is actually the new OG Anunoby, he's found a gear that nobody thought he had, and then when you pair that version of him with a healthy Brunson and Cat, suddenly the Knicks have a legitimate three-headed monster. But to be fair, their real concern is still how they've matched up against the best teams in the league, as that's absolutely the biggest thing holding them back, as they are still yet to beat either Cleveland, Boston, or Oklahoma City. But if this trio can click, especially with OG continuing to thrive, even in a smaller role, they do have a chance to make a bit of noise in the playoffs, as it's definitely something I'll be tracking game by game right down the stretch of the season. The sixth thing I'll be watching very closely between now and the playoffs is how the Celtics handle their one major concern, and that's the health of Jaylen Brown. Lately, Brown's been battling a lingering knee issue, and a recent report from the Athletic's Jay King really raised some eyebrows. According to King, Brown has actually begun modifying his play style due to the injury, which has clearly impacted his athleticism, a core part of what makes him so dangerous on both ends of the ball. To adjust, Brown said he's been studying film of Celtics legend Paul Pierce. I was watching some Paul Pierce footage Brown shared, just getting to your spots and playing at a certain pace. It makes sense. Pierce was never the fastest or the most explosive player, but he was a master of pacing, positioning, and getting to his shots, especially around the elbows. He didn't need to blow by you to be effective. And now, Brown is looking to replicate some of that style as he deals with limitations because of the injury. Now, in a vacuum, developing a more refined mid-range game would absolutely not be a bad thing. In fact, it could elevate Brown's game long term, especially considering the fact how he's been less efficient from that area this season compared to last. But let's be real, the real issue here isn't the new skills, it's why he's having to learn them. The bottom line, if Jaylen Brown doesn't appear to be as athletic as he was earlier in the season, that's a massive red flag for Boston. We're talking about the reigning finals MVP, the guy who was Boston's most important player through last season's playoffs. He's also arguably their most important perimeter defender and one of their most effective slashers, someone who forces defenses to stay honest and not just camp out at the three-point line. If Brown can't get downhill with the same burst, if he's not able to be as good of a defender, and if he's not a backdoor threat in transition, that fundamentally changes the dynamic of the team, as it could potentially make them a lot easier to defend, especially for teams willing to sell out at the three-point line. It also puts even more pressure on the shoulders of Jason Tatum, as he's going to have to step up in a way that he's truly never had to before. Tatum has always had the luxury of playing alongside Brown as a 1A, 1B situation, but now with Brown hobbled and possibly limited, the Celtics may be asking Tatum to carry more weight than he's ever done before. I'm not saying Tatum can't do it, he's absolutely capable, but increasing someone's workload like this, especially heading into the most intense stretch of the season, that's a major adjustment and something that cannot be overlooked. It's absolutely a storyline to watch heading into the postseason, as if Jaylen Brown isn't close to 100%, it changes everything for Boston. The seventh thing I'll be watching very closely between now and the playoffs is whether or not the Indiana Pacers might actually be better than advertised. It feels like people have already penciled in that the Eastern Conference Finals will be a Boston versus Cleveland showdown. Like the rest of the East is just filler, but Indiana is quietly raising their hand saying, do not forget about us. This team has already made the Eastern Conference Finals as they did it last year, and somehow they've gotten better this season, especially in one area that's always been their Achilles heel, defense. Last year, their defense was scrappy but leaky. They'd apply great ball pressure, but once you got past the first line of defense, the rotations would often collapse and you'd be looking at an easy bucket. But this season, that's no longer the case. Over the last 15 games in particular, the Pacers have ranked 10th for defensive rating, holding teams to just 111.9 points per game. They've tightened up those breakdowns, and while they're still aggressive on the ball, they now have the back end help to actually close out possessions. That subtle but crucial shift has completely changed this team's ceiling. But let's be real, the heart of the team is still Tyrese Halliburton. Even though he recently missed 6 games due to injury, he's been electric when he's played. In the 15 games he's suited up in that time, Indiana went 10-5, and a huge reason why is because Halliburton has been in complete control. In that time, he put up 20.7 points, 11.3 rebounds, and 2.1 steals per game, all while shooting 54% from the floor. Those Those numbers are ridiculous, but for me what really stands out is the efficiency. Despite dishing out over 11 assists per game, he's only committing 1.2 turnovers a game. That gives him an assist to turnover ratio of 5.6, which puts him into rare air. For reference, John Stockton's career mark was 4.8, and for Magic Johnson, arguably the greatest playmaker ever, his career assist to turnover ratio was 5.8. Halliburton is operating at a historic level right now, and that type of composure and control at the point guard spot is absolutely invaluable come playoff time, when every possession matters even more once the game slows down. But it's their clutch time performances this season that really show you how ready the Indiana Pacers are. When the game's on the line, Indiana doesn't just blink, they actually improve. They rank 5th in clutch time offense, scoring 119.9 points per 100 possessions, while on defense they're also improving, ranking 5th for clutch time defense, holding opponents to just 102.9 points per 100. That is incredible two-way basketball when the games are on the line. The result? A 20-14 record in clutch games this season. That's no fluke. That's a sign that the team is mentally tough, battle-tested, and knows how to win tight games. Exactly what you want heading into the playoffs. So while everyone's busy preparing for a Boston-Cleveland Eastern Conference final, Indiana is lurking. They've transformed themselves into a good two-way side. Tyrese Halliburton is operating at an all-time level, and they are thriving in big-time moments like no other. This team, along with 3 others, are absolutely built to do damage in the playoffs. And if you want to hear about 3 more teams that nobody's talking about, yet they have the ability to knock off a title favorite, you can check out that full breakdown right now.